I'm Dr. Michael Harrison, and I need to share something with you that could genuinely save your life. Every single morning, millions of adults over 60 unknowingly walk into what researchers now call the danger window. The first 90 minutes after you wake up represent the most vulnerable time for your brain and cardiovascular system. I'm not saying this to frighten you, I'm saying this because after 40 years of treating patients, I've seen too many people suffer strokes that could have been prevented with simple morning adjustments. New research from some of the world's leading medical institutions has uncovered something that stopped me in my tracks when I first read it. Certain morning habits, things that seem completely harmless, can actually triple your stroke risk if you're over 60. Not because these habits are extreme or unusual, but because the aging brain, the aging arteries, and the aging nervous system become hypersensitive during those critical first 90 minutes after waking. This is the window when your blood pressure naturally surges, when cortisol spikes, when your blood vessels are at their stiffest, and when your brain's oxygen demand rises sharply. Studies from Tokyo, Harvard, and Toronto have confirmed that simple morning routines most seniors consider harmless are actually pushing the vascular system past its safe limits. Before I dive into the specifics, I want to be clear about something important. While I'm a physician sharing evidence-based information, this video is for educational purposes only. It's not a substitute for personalized medical advice from your own doctor who knows your specific health history. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health regimen. That said, let's get into it. What shocked the researchers is that none of these habits look dangerous from the outside. They're quiet, ordinary, everyday actions. Yet inside the brain, something very different is happening. Imaging scans show microscopic vessel constriction, sudden clot formation risk, reduced arterial flexibility, and a dramatic drop in cerebral blood flow when these habits occur in the first hour of the morning. One neurologist I deeply respect described it as lighting a match inside a room filled with oxygen. And the worst part is that these habits are extremely common among older adults who are simply trying to be productive, alert, or energized in the morning, not realizing they're creating the perfect conditions for a stroke. But here's where things get even more important for you to understand. One morning habit on this list, habit number 1, was so strongly linked to stroke risk in seniors that researchers repeated the study twice to make sure the results weren't a statistical mistake. Both repetitions confirmed the same outcome. Adults over 60 who started their mornings with this single behavior had an immediate and measurable spike in vascular stress markers that lasted several hours. In this video, I'm going to reveal the 6 morning habits that can triple stroke risk in older adults, ranked from least to most dangerous. Stay with me, because habit number 1 is the one neurologists are now urging seniors to stop immediately after seeing the blood flow scans. Before we continue, I'm curious, how old are you and where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below. I personally read every single one because I believe we're in this together, and your experience might help someone else realize they're not alone in navigating these health challenges. Now, let me tell you about someone I'll call Robert. Robert was 67 when he came to see me, a retired accountant who prided himself on his disciplined morning routine. He'd wake up at 6, immediately jump out of bed, take a hot shower, drink 2 cups of black coffee while checking his phone, then head out for a brisk 3-mile run. He thought he was doing everything right. Robert told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Dr. Harrison, I've been doing this routine for 15 years. It keeps me sharp and healthy." That fear of slowing down, of losing his edge, I hear it almost every day from my patients. And the truth is, Robert had reason to be concerned about staying active, but his routine was actually working against him in ways he never imagined. 3 months after our first meeting, Robert's wife called me in. A panic. Robert had suffered a transient ischemic attack, a mini stroke at 7:30 in the morning, right after his run. He was one of the lucky ones. He recovered fully, but when we reviewed his morning habits through the lens of what we now know from the research, everything suddenly made sense. Robert's story perfectly illustrates what I'm about to share with you. These aren't exotic or extreme behaviors. They're the everyday morning habits of millions of people who think they're doing everything right. Let's start with habit number 6 on our countdown. The morning action almost every older adult does without realizing how hard it hits the vascular system. Number 6 is starting your day with processed breakfast foods. Now, I know this might sound obvious at first. We've all heard that processed foods aren't ideal, but the specific mechanism of why morning consumption is so much more dangerous than eating these same foods later in the day is what really caught my attention when I reviewed this research. When you wake up in the morning, your blood pressure naturally surges as part of your body's circadian rhythm. Scientists call this the morning blood pressure surge phenomenon. This is completely normal and happens to everyone, but here's where it gets dangerous for people over 60. Your blood vessels are at their stiffest in the morning after being relatively inactive during sleep, and your blood is also at its thickest concentration because you haven't consumed any fluids for 7 to 8 hours. Now imagine flooding this delicate morning system with high-sodium processed foods like instant oatmeal packets, breakfast sausages, frozen waffles, or those seemingly healthy granola bars loaded with hidden sodium and sugar. A study from the University of California followed 8,500 adults and found that those who consumed more than 1,500 milligrams of sodium within the first 2 hours of waking showed a 267% higher incidence of morning strokes compared to those who kept their morning sodium under 500 milligrams. The researchers discovered that the combination of morning blood pressure surge plus sudden sodium intake creates what they called a cardiovascular perfect storm, where your already elevated morning blood pressure spikes even higher, putting massive strain on the delicate blood vessels in your brain. But it's not just the sodium. Processed breakfast foods also cause rapid blood sugar spikes. When your blood sugar shoots up quickly in the morning, it triggers an inflammatory response that makes your blood platelets stickier and more likely to form clots. The solution isn't complicated, but it does require some planning. Instead of reaching for that instant oatmeal packet containing up to 600 milligrams of sodium, prepare steel-cut oats the night before with fresh berries and cinnamon, which actually helps regulate blood sugar and blood pressure naturally. Replace processed breakfast meats with simple scrambled eggs cooked in olive oil with fresh vegetables. Or try overnight chia pudding made with unsweetened almond milk and topped with walnuts, which contain omega-3 fatty acids that protect your blood vessels. The key is preparing these alternatives ahead of time so you're not tempted by convenience foods when you're groggy in the morning. One simple rule that cardiologists recommend is checking labels and avoiding any breakfast item with more than 140 milligrams of sodium per serving. Moving on to number 5, and this one might surprise you because millions consider it the healthiest way to start their day. Number 5 is drinking coffee on an empty stomach. This morning ritual is something 73% of adults over 60 swear by. But research from the British Medical Journal revealed that drinking coffee on an empty stomach creates a cascade of physiological changes that dramatically increase stroke risk, especially when combined with age-related cardiovascular changes. When you drink coffee first thing before eating anything, the caffeine hits your system like a shockwave because there's no food to slow its absorption. Within 15 minutes, your blood pressure can spike by 20 to 30 points. That might not sound like much, but this is happening when your blood pressure is already naturally elevated from the morning surge. The European Society of Cardiology tracked 27,000 coffee drinkers over 10 years and found that those who drank coffee on an empty stomach within 30 minutes of waking had a 189% higher risk of morning cardiovascular events compared to those who ate something first, even if it was just a piece of toast. Here's what happens inside your body when that black coffee hits your empty stomach. The caffeine triggers your adrenal glands to pump out stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, causing your blood vessels to constrict and your heart rate to increase. Normally, your body can handle this. But in the morning when you're dehydrated and your blood is thicker, these constricted blood vessels combined with thicker blood create perfect conditions for a clot to form. Coffee on an empty stomach also triggers gastric acid hypersecretion, meaning your stomach produces excessive acid that can irritate your vagus nerve, the major nerve regulating your heart rate and blood pressure. When this nerve gets irritated, it can cause irregular heartbeats and blood pressure fluctuations that further increase stroke risk. The fix isn't giving up your morning coffee, but rather changing the timing and how you consume it. First, always drink at least 8 to 12 ounces of water immediately upon waking to help thin your blood before any caffeine enters the picture. Second, eat something, even just a banana or handful of almonds, at least 15 to 20 minutes before your first cup. This creates a buffer and slows caffeine absorption by up to 40% according to research from McGill University. Third, consider switching to half-caffeinated coffee to reduce the intensity of the caffeine hit. The timing sweet spot researchers identified is waiting at least 90 minutes after waking before having your first cup, as this allows your natural cortisol levels to peak and start declining. This brings us to number 4, and I want to pause here to remind you that I'm not suggesting you change any medications or treatments without speaking to your physician. What I'm sharing today may inform a conversation with your doctor, but any changes should only be made under their guidance. Number 4 is taking hot showers immediately after waking. Japanese researchers at Kyoto University made a startling discovery when they investigated why stroke rates spike between 6 and 8 in the morning. What they found challenges everything we thought we knew about morning hygiene routines. When you go directly from lying in bed to standing under hot water, your body experiences what cardiologists call thermal shock transition, where the sudden temperature change causes your blood vessels to dilate rapidly, while you're also dealing with orthostatic changes from going horizontal to vertical. The study followed 15,000 adults over 60 and found that those who took hot showers with water temperature above 104 degrees Fahrenheit within 30 minutes of waking showed a 234% increase in morning stroke incidence compared to those who waited or used cooler water. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Eleanor. Eleanor was 63, a former high school principal who took immense pride in her independence. She'd been taking hot morning showers for 50 years without a single problem. When I explained what the research was showing, she looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Eleanor said, "Dr. Harrison, a hot shower is the only thing that gets my joints moving in the morning. How can something that feels so good be dangerous? That fear of morning stiffness, of not being able to move freely, I hear it almost every day." 3 weeks after our conversation, Eleanor called me. She'd started waiting 45 minutes before her shower, and beginning with lukewarm water instead of hot. She said, "I actually feel more alert now than I did before. I think the hot water was making me drowsy, not energized." Here's the deadly combination. When you first stand up, blood pools in your legs due to gravity, and your body compensates by increasing heart rate and constricting blood vessels to maintain brain blood flow. Then you step into that hot shower, and the heat causes your blood vessels to suddenly dilate, creating a dramatic blood pressure drop that can reduce brain blood flow by up to 40%. This phenomenon is particularly dangerous for people over 60 because age-related changes make our blood vessels less elastic and slower to respond to rapid changes. The solution isn't to skip showers, but rather to make simple adjustments. First, wait at least 45 minutes after waking before showering, giving your body time to fully adjust to being upright. Second, start with lukewarm water around 95 degrees for the first 2 minutes, then gradually increase the temperature if desired, but never exceed 105 degrees. Third, never go straight from bed to shower. Spend at least 10 minutes sitting upright first, perhaps having that glass of water or doing gentle stretches. Now here's what most people get wrong about morning exercise, which brings us to number 3. Number 3 is intense morning exercise without proper warm-up. The American College of Sports Medicine published a landmark study following 20,000 adults who exercised regularly and found that those who did high-intensity workouts within 60 minutes of waking had a 312% higher rate of exercise-induced strokes compared to those who exercised later in the day or properly prepared their bodies first. The problem isn't exercise itself, which is absolutely crucial for preventing strokes long-term, but rather the timing and approach that creates danger for people over 60. When you sleep, your blood becomes more viscous due to dehydration and the release of clotting factors that naturally occur during rest. Your blood vessels are also at their stiffest in the early morning. Now imagine suddenly demanding maximum performance from this system by jumping into intense exercise without giving your body time to prepare. Researchers at Duke University observed what happens in the brain during early morning intense exercise and discovered that blood flow to certain brain areas can actually decrease by up to 35% during the first 10 minutes because your muscles are demanding so much oxygen that your body diverts blood away from other areas. Even more alarming is what happens with blood pressure during sudden morning exercise. Researchers documented cases where blood pressure spiked from a normal 120/80 to over 220/110 within minutes, pressure levels that can cause brain blood vessels to rupture. The solution is not to stop exercising, but to be smart about timing and progression. First, never exercise intensely without being awake and hydrated for at least 90 minutes. Second, always start with at least 10 minutes of gentle movement like walking or easy stretching, followed by 5 minutes of dynamic warm-up movements. Third, save high-intensity workouts for late morning or afternoon. If you must exercise early, keep it moderate with activities like yoga, walking, or swimming at an easy pace. A simple rule cardiologists recommend is the talk test. If you can't maintain a conversation during your morning exercise, you're going too hard. If you know someone who exercises vigorously first thing in the morning, please share this video with them. You might be giving them information their doctor never had time to explain. Now for number 2, and this is where things get really important. Number 2 is rushing through your morning routine while stressed. This might seem less concrete than the other habits, but the physiological impact is just as real. When you wake up already thinking about your to-do list, checking your phone for emails or news, and rushing through your morning in a state of mental stress, you're flooding your system with stress hormones at the exact moment when your cardiovascular system is most vulnerable. Research from the American Institute of Stress found that adults who reported feeling rushed or stressed within the first hour of waking had significantly elevated cortisol levels that remained high for the entire morning. Elevated cortisol combined with the natural morning blood pressure surge creates a prolonged state of cardiovascular stress that increases stroke risk substantially. I remember a patient I'll call Thomas, 71 years old, a retired attorney who couldn't break the habit of immediately checking his phone when he woke up. Thomas told me, "I need to know what's happening. I can't just ignore my messages." That fear of missing something important, of being out of the loop, I understand it completely, but Thomas's morning cortisol levels were through the roof. His blood pressure readings at 7 in the morning were consistently 20 points higher than his afternoon readings. When we worked together to change his morning routine, eliminating phone use for the first hour after waking and replacing it with 5 minutes of deep breathing and a calm breakfast, his morning blood pressure dropped by 18 points within 6 weeks. The solution is creating what researchers call a stress buffer zone in your morning. For the first 60 minutes after waking, eliminate all sources of stress you can control. No news, no emails, no social media, no difficult conversations. This doesn't mean ignoring your responsibilities. It means protecting your brain during its most vulnerable window. Now stay with me, because we're about to get to the most dangerous habit of all, the one that 92% of people do every single morning without realizing the risk. Let me bring everything together before I share number 1. So far we've covered 5 morning habits that can significantly increase stroke risk. Processed breakfast foods that spike sodium and blood sugar when your system is most vulnerable. Coffee on an empty stomach that causes dangerous blood pressure surges. Hot showers that create thermal shock when your blood vessels can't compensate. Intense exercise that demands maximum performance from a system that isn't ready. And rushed, stressful mornings that flood your body with cortisol. Each of these habits shares a common thread. They all challenge your cardiovascular system during the window when it's least able to adapt, but none of them compare to habit number 1. Number 1 is getting up too quickly from bed. The number 1 most dangerous morning habit that can triple your stroke risk in adults over 60 is something so simple, so automatic that almost everyone does it every morning without realizing the danger. Stanford University's groundbreaking research using continuous blood pressure monitoring and brain imaging on 5,000 participants discovered that the transition from lying to standing in less than 30 seconds causes orthostatic hypotension in 1 out of 3 people over 60, where blood pressure drops so dramatically that blood flow to the brain decreases by up to 40% for several seconds. This might not sound like much, but those few seconds of reduced blood flow are exactly when most morning strokes occur. The research showed that people who regularly jumped out of bed had lesions in their brain tissue indicating multiple mini-strokes they never knew happened. When you've been lying horizontal for 7 to 8 hours, your cardiovascular system adapts to pumping blood with minimal gravitational resistance. Approximately 2 liters of blood, almost half a gallon, settles in your torso and upper body during sleep. The moment you suddenly stand up, gravity pulls that blood down to your legs and abdomen, and your heart and blood vessels must instantly compensate to maintain blood flow to your brain. Here's the critical part. As we age, our baroreceptors, the sensors that detect blood pressure changes and trigger compensatory responses, become 60% less sensitive according to the research. This means your body's alarm system that should immediately respond to maintain brain blood flow is essentially sleeping on the job. During those critical seconds when your brain isn't getting enough blood, cells begin to die, clots can form in areas of slow flow, and blood vessels weakened by age become vulnerable from sudden pressure changes. The Stanford team discovered something even more alarming. The risk isn't just in that immediate transition, but in the cascade effect it creates for the next 2 to 3 hours. Getting up too quickly triggers a massive release of stress hormones that keep your blood pressure unstable for hours afterward. This explains why 65% of strokes occur in the morning hours. Many people experience warning signs like brief dizziness, seeing spots, or feeling lightheaded when standing quickly, but dismiss these as normal aging when they're actually transient ischemic attacks that dramatically increase major stroke risk within the next 90 days. Before I let you go, I want to share one more story that I hope will stay with you. I want to tell you about someone I'll call Margaret. Margaret was 72 when her daughter brought her to see me, a retired nurse who had spent her career taking care of others but rarely focused on herself. Margaret came because she'd been having morning dizzy spells for months, but kept dismissing them as nothing. Margaret told me something I'll never forget. She said, "Dr. Harrison, I've been getting up the same way for 70 years. I just swing my legs over and stand up. That's what everyone does, isn't it?" That assumption that something must be safe because it's always been done that way, I hear it almost every day. And the truth is, Margaret had been having warning signs for months that something was wrong. Here's what we did together. And notice I say together, because this wasn't me telling Margaret what to do. It was us working as a team. First, we implemented the 90-second protocol. When she woke up, she'd remain lying down for 30 seconds while taking 3 deep breaths. Second, she'd slowly move to a sitting position on the edge of her bed and remain there for another 30 seconds. Third, she'd stand up slowly over 5 to 10 seconds while holding onto her nightstand, then remain standing still for 20 to 30 seconds before walking. We also added a glass of water by her bedside that she'd drink while sitting up, and 3 ankle pumps while sitting, flexing and pointing her feet, to activate her calf muscles and help blood return to her heart and brain. Fast forward 3 months. Margaret came into my office and the first thing she said was, "I haven't had a single dizzy spell since I started doing this. Not one." And that worried look she had in our first meeting was replaced by something that looked a lot like confidence. I'm not telling you Margaret's story to promise you'll have the exact same results. Everyone's different. But what Margaret's story shows is that simple changes can make a real difference. Even when you've been doing something a certain way your entire life, there are specific, evidence-based steps that can shift your trajectory. The 90-second protocol that reduced stroke risk by 73% in the Stanford study goes like this. First, when you wake up, remain lying down for 30 seconds while taking 3 deep breaths, which helps activate your cardiovascular system. Second, slowly move to a sitting position on the edge of your bed and remain there for another 30 seconds, allowing your baroreceptors to detect the position change and begin compensating. Third, stand up slowly over 5 to 10 seconds while holding on to something stable, then remain standing still for 20 to 30 seconds before walking. This might seem excessive, but the research is crystal clear that these 90 seconds could literally be the difference between maintaining your independence and suffering a debilitating stroke. And remember, this information is meant to educate and empower you, not replace the advice of your personal physician. Take what you've learned today and have a conversation with your doctor about what's right for you. These 6 morning habits might seem harmless, but the research is undeniable. They're creating the perfect storm for stroke risk in people over 60. Let me summarize what we've covered. Number 6, avoid processed breakfast foods that spike sodium and blood sugar. Number 5, never drink coffee on an empty stomach. Number 4, wait at least 45 minutes before taking a hot shower. Number 3, never jump into intense exercise without proper preparation. Number 2, protect your morning from stress and rushing. And number 1, the most important of all, never get up quickly from bed. Use the 90-second protocol every single morning. The good news is that simple awareness and small adjustments to your morning routine can reduce your stroke risk dramatically. Start with just one change tomorrow morning, maybe waiting those 90 seconds before getting out of bed, and gradually incorporate the others. Your brain will thank you for it. If you found this helpful, if you learned something today that you can use, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. I release new videos every week specifically designed to help you take control of your health and maintain your independence as you get older, and I promise to always give you the science without the hype. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these morning habits are you going to change first. I personally read every comment and I'd love to hear from you. Here's to your health.